Hello everyone, this is part 1 of What If Naruto Gained Ashura's Memories. This story is made by ArthuriaPenDragon, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Long ago, in a time forgotten by the people of Earth, was an era of long-lasting rage and unending wars. The people fought each other, for even the pettiest of reasons. Some of them simply sought to gain more power through BS head, others simply fought for the sake of fighting. Humanity had a curse, a sickening and infectious curse so great that in time even the other creatures were caught in it, and soon, the earth was slowly being seated by the curse of the humans. This curse was named hatred. A powerful force that could drive any person from the innocent bystander to a rage-fueled K who would hunt down those who wronged them. It was like a vicious cycle, a chain of hurt. The more one fought, the more blood spilled, the more hatred spread among the humans. Not even the new generations of the world were safe from it, as parents taught their children to hate, at the same time as they taught those children to walk. One day, however, a princess came from a faraway land. This princess sought the Shinju, to harvest its fruit and take it to her family. This princess was Otsutsuki Kaguya. Originally she had sought the plant to take the fruit and destroy the world. Yet as time went by, she became attached to the humans, as a few had treated her with kindness. The people gave her home, despite being an outsider, they treated her like one of their own. She had even found love. However, war and hatred still thrived and she despised the idea. She now wished for peace, she wished to protect those whom she had come to care for. So, she sought power to break the chain which was hatred. She ate the fruit of the Shinju, gaining power beyond human comprehension. Using this great power, she ended the B. For the first time since the dawn of this world, humanity knew peace. Like the Shinju, Kaguya was also worshipped as a living god on earth. People bowed before her in respect and reverence for her power and divine will, that which many considered to have no equal. Later on, she gave birth to 2 sons, who were both born with a part of her great power. At one point in her reign, however, Kaguya herself fell to the curse of hatred. She enslaved the people she once cared for and protected, driving fear into many peaceful hearts. From that day forward, behind her back, people called her a demon. She became so greedy that she even wished to end the life of her own 2 sons, to gain back the chakra, the power, which they'd stolen from her. In her great rage, Kaguya became one with the Shinju plant, giving life to a great beast, the Jubi. The beast was so great, that a swipe of a single tail could level nations and mountains within a blink. The beast, which had once been caring to Princess Kaguya, now had no compassion left for her or anything else. The Jubi merely wished to destroy everything and to get hold of all the chakra in the world. The 2 sons of Kaguya, Hagoromo and Hamura, fought against the Jubi in a great battle that reshaped the world, and they sealed it. Its power was sealed within Hagoromo, and the empty husk of the beast was locked far away, creating the moon. Hamura and a few of the brothers' clansmen left the world to guard the seal for the Jubi. Hagoromo remained with the humans and decided to guide them, for unlike his mother, he had not lost faith in the good of humanity. He taught people to use chakra for connecting, healing and spreading good. These teachings were ninshu. For his efforts against the beast and for bringing the teachings of love and understanding, the people gave Hagoromo the moniker of Rikudo Sennin, and some even called him a god. After some time, Hagoromo would split the chakra of the Jubi in 9 equal parts, giving them consciousness and names. Answer: the 9 Biju were born. With time, Hagoromo would have his own children, 2 sons, who would inherit parts of his power. The older, whom he named Indra, would inherit the yin part of his power and gain a lesser form of his grandmother's eyes. These eyes would later be known as the Sharingan. The younger son, Ashura, would inherit the yang part of his father's chakra, which gave him a powerful body and strong life force. The 2 brothers had grown up close, learning ninshu from their father. However, the difference in their skills were extreme. Indra was hailed as a natural prodigy, even by the high Otsutsuki standards, and many of the sage's followers believed that he would inherit. At the same time, Indra led a solitary life. He cherished his family, His brother was his greatest treasure, and anyone who dared say otherwise would face a very pissed-off Otsutsuki Indra, and if they managed to survive the prodigy's anger they were never seen near the family again. Because of Indra's solitary nature, yet still cherishing his family, he preferred to work alone. He believed that others would hinder his progress. Ashura, on the other hand, was a prankster and preferred to spend time with his friends as well as his non-human siblings. He liked to connect with people, rather than study. Yet given time, Ashura unlocked his own powers, manifesting the ability, which would later be dubbed Mokuton. As he gradually came into his powers, with the help of his friends, he gained skill and power to match Indra. As Hagoromo realized that his time was getting shorter and shorter, he gave a task for his sons to complete. The result of the task would determine which of them would be the heir to the Ninshu. Indra, who had always believed he would inherit without question, as the older, had been quite displeased. Yet, he still respected his father's choices, so he accepted the task with the grace that was expected of him, confident in his ability to complete it and prove his father he was a worthy heir. So the two brothers had left on their separate journeys to complete the given task. As expected, Indra was faster and had made it back sooner. Upon arriving and giving his account of the ongoings to his father, Indra expected to be declared the heir. However, Hagoromo insisted on waiting for Ashura to return. A few days later Ashura arrived home as well, followed by a few people, who had become his close companions during his journey. After Ashura told of his own experiences while away, Hagoromo asked for some time to properly decide. The next day, the Sennin, to the shock of everyone gathered, his sons included, declared Ashura his heir. Indra, in a fit of rage, stormed away. Ashura wished to follow him, but Hagoromo had forbidden it, asking his younger son to let Indra think on his own for a while. Saddened and unsure of the reasonability, Ashura complied with his father's wishes. However, leaving Indra on his own was a poor decision by both Hagoromo and Ashura. Indra retreated to the forest to train, trying to release all his pent-up anger and disappointment. However, that was the time when Black Zetsu approached the older son. Zetsu spoke to Indra, even though what his words were are unknown. What is known is that Zetsu's words had turned Indra's anger to hatred. Hatred felt for his once beloved and cherished brother. So Indra left his family behind, only followed by a few of those who still believed in him. As time passed, Indra gained more power and understanding of such powers. What Indra had gained about his powers, had in the end proved quite key to his few allies. Set in his course to beat Ashura and gain the mantle of heir, Indra K his followers gaining a new and improved Sharingan. The Sennin trusted all his teachings to Ashura on his bed. With his father D and only his Biju siblings remaining by his side, Ashura continued to teach Ninshu to people. However, he didn't give up hope to see his brother again. To have him back by his side, kind and caring as he used to be. Over the years, the brothers crossed paths several times. Each one of their clashes mightier indeed than the last. One wished to kill his brother while the other just wished to end this fight and see his family whole again. Ashura even gained the help of their Biju siblings. Despite some of them being skeptical about Indra's nature, and he fought his brother to a draw several times. Their last battle, decades after that fateful day when Ashura was declared heir, was the longest and won. It claimed the life of both brothers and sparked hate of such a scale between their families, hate that had not been seen since long ago. Ashura's family, and followers, became the Senju clan and later, through distant ties, the Uzumaki clan, who held their forefathers' ideals of peace through understanding. An ideal, which would be dubbed Thei no Ishi, thousands of years later. Indra's family and followers formed the Uchiha clan, who held the elders' belief of peace through power. His beliefs would spark the Nakushimi no Noroi, which spread through the Uchiha like wildfire. However, something occurred that had not been seen before in the world. Something that not even Hagoromo or Kaguya had foreseen. When the two brothers D their natural chakra remained, this caused the two brothers to reincarnate themselves into various individuals within the descendants throughout history, fueling and continuing the feud between their clans. As time went by, the Uchiha and Senju forgot the meaning and cause of their fight, they ended up simply fighting for the sake of fighting. And like a cycle of seasons, life, and rebirth would come again and again. And with each reincarnation, the transmigrants would grow stronger. Each and every pair of transmigrants were called the gods of their time. One such pair of gods were Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. The two legendary shinobi would befriend each other, as children and dream of peace. Of a time and place, where people didn't need to fight wars for survival. It would take decades, but the dream would come true. For the two clan heads would sign a pact, ceasing the war, and for the first time since Indra left his family behind, the clans were at peace. The transmigrants stood side by side. Hagoromo himself, who while D remained watching the world, allowed himself to hope. The pain and be brought by his descendants had caused him great pain, but upon seeing Hashirama and Madara, he hoped for a better world to come. A world he had failed to create. The two clans would go to form the first shinobi village in Hai no Kuni. A village, which would be a symbol of hope and peace, named Konohagakure no Sato by Madara. Hashirama would marry Uzumaki Mito, to gain the might and support of her clan, and the three ancient clans would lay the milestones of revolution. In time, Hashirama was elected the first leader of Konoha, a decision even Madara himself supported. Hashirama's tenure as Hokage was one of prosperity and peace. However, the idyllic peace was shattered, when Hashirama declared his younger brother, Tobirama, to be the next Hokage. Displeased by the choice and saying he would not follow the kei of his beloved younger brother, Madara left. Hashirama went after him, trying to make him see sense. Like a time so long ago, the time of their forefathers, Hashirama chased after Madara, wishing for him to be by his side. However, his hope was not to be. The two fought and fought, reshaping the very land. Madara, to ensure his victory, even enslaved the mighty Kyuubi no Kitsune. Still, Hashirama reigned victorious with the help of his wife, who, to save her husband from D, sealed the Kyuubi within herself, thus becoming the first ever Jinchuriki. The place of their last battle, which would claim Madara's life, would later be called Theshumatsu no Tani. It would be that time, when Indra's chakra would leave Madara, floating in the world, watching the clans and his brothers transmigrant. Upon Hashirama and Mito's return to the village, the Biju would be claimed too dangerous to roam free by Tobirama and Mito. The other 8 would be captured and sealed as well, and they would be distributed to the other villages, as a sign of peace. Despite Hashirama's efforts, a war would break out, which history would remember as the First Shinobi War. It would be on that battlefield, where Hashirama would die, by taking a blow to the back to protect his brother. With that, Asura's chakra would be free once more, and the two brothers would remain watching, as the world flew by. Watching with no small amount of horror, even Indra, as Madara's plan took shape. A plan, which the ancient Uchiha would call Projectsuki no Mi. And it is where the cycle starts again, for the new transmigrants are soon to be born. It would be a fateful night, the last day of the Yondaime Hokage's tenure, as he would die on the battlefield with his wife, that the cycle of reincarnation would be complete once more. Asura would watch, as the masked Uchiha controlled his eldest Biju sibling, trying to destroy the village that one of his descendants and transmigrants had built from nothing. He would sense that the child about to be his fox sibling's host, was his own transmigrant. A child with both Uzumaki and Senju-bi in his veins. Admittedly, the second was unknown. The father, who had the Senju-bi, was unaware of his heritage, having grown up in an orphanage, due to the war he had ended. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. That was the child's name. Or more like Senju Uzumaki Naruto, but that was a question of preference. When the time was right, the child himself would decide which variation of his name he wanted to use. Indra had already joined the world of living, attaching his chakra to a child by the name of Uchiha Sasuke. He had watched, with a bit of curiosity, as his brother's chakra sunk in with the child. Harmonizing with the child. Asura himself felt the pull of another complete transmigration. He could just see his fox brother raging at his descendants for sealing him again. He watched helplessly, as Kurama tried bisecting his infant transmigrant. No. Kurama, don't you dare. But of course, without a physical body he was not heard and could do nothing. Both parents jumped in front of the sealing altar, using their very bee to shield their son, stopping Kurama's claw inches away from its target. He listened to the parents' last words, Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato, if he was correct, his heart breaking. The child would never know the clan's ways, would never know his parents' love. However, before he could ponder too much on it, his senses ceased existing. Roughly 10 minutes after the seal closed around the fox, the Sandaime would find the wailing Naruto with his parents, the altar's candles snuffed out and vines and leaves cradling the whole thing, as if it had grown out of the very ground. However, it would be something the Sandaime would brush off and he wouldn't even remember it for a very long time. Konoha was loud with the music and cheers of celebration. Today was a day of mourning and celebration at the same time. 6 years ago on this very day, October 10th, the Kyuubi had attacked the village, claiming the life of innocents and shinobi alike. However, it was also the day when the village's beloved Yondaime Hokage had given his life to stop the beast from destroying their home. In the memory of that night, every year there would be a memorial to remember the heroes who gave their life to stall the fox, and after the memorial, there would be a great celebration to remember that despite everything, Konoha still stood strong. However, not everyone was enjoying the festivities. A young boy sat alone in his apartment hoping the villagers would leave him alone. This young boy was none other than Uzumaki Naruto, the village's pariah. Today was his birthday. He was 6 now, yet unlike other children, he didn't enjoy his birthday. Only a very few amount of people ever wished him anything good on this day, those few were the Hokage and the ANBU, who would drop by if they had the chance. Only those precious people ever bothered to give him gifts. The reason he sat here alone. Last year he had gone out to enjoy the festival and a group of drunk civilians beat him. The Anbu had interfered and he was taken to hospital. Luckily it was nothing serious, but it was a night he would forever remember. So, to avoid such incidents, this year he decided to stay inside. He was alone now, curled on his old bed. Happy birthday to me, the little blonde muttered sadly. Sometimes, on days like this, he wondered if his parents had ever loved him. Last year, Hokage Gigi had finally told him that no, he wasn't abandoned, it was just that his parents had died in the fox's attack. Yet, it didn't ease Naruto's young mind. If his parents were alive, would they have loved him, or would they have given him those horrible mean looks that others did? Suddenly he was jolted from his depressing thoughts when he heard a commotion outside. For a moment, fear spiked in his heart. The last time he'd heard so many people near him, he had ended up in the hospital. The blonde hurriedly scrambled from his bed and tried to leave through the window, as he'd seen the adults do, but it was no use. Soon the door to his home was broken down and the mob of angry people poured in like a raging river. They shouted things like, "Bakemono," and, "Get the kitsune." Naruto tried backing away and running from them, but sadly it was no use. "Please," he whispered, as a man with dirty blonde hair and gray eyes approached him. "Please, leave me alone. I didn't do anything." The man's gray eyes narrowed on him and he sneered. "Didn't do anything, did you, demon? You just killed our families and friends. Yondaime-sama should have KU." The man kicked him hard and Naruto fell to the floor with a cry. He curled into a ball as the hits and kicks came again and again, always from a different angle. He whimpered softly at every new wave of pain. At first, he tried asking them to leave him, but every time he spoke, the blows were harder, so he quickly fell quiet. Eventually the shock and pain was too much for him and he fell unconscious. When Naruto opened his eyes he felt no pain. However, he woke to a completely unfamiliar and blank environment, quite literally. Everything around him was plain white. It was warm and serene, yet it also set him on edge, as he had no idea how he had ended up here. He didn't even know where here was. He turned around to look around, but he still saw nothing but white. He was starting to panic now. "Hello, anyone here? Where am I?" "Fear not, child. I have brought you here. It was the fastest way for me to spare you the pain," a kind male voice called. Naruto whirled around, following it. Just a few steps away from him, stood a young man he'd never seen before. The stranger had dark brown eyes and short, spiky brown hair, 2 locks of which were wrapped in bandages framing either side of his face, and his forehead was also wrapped in white cloth. He wore a light-colored kimono with magatama around the collar. The kimono was held closed by a dark-colored sash. Underneath, he wore a black full-body suit. Who are you? And where are we?" The man smiled kindly at him. "My name is Otsutsuki Ashura. And we are in between the worlds. Between the real living world and between the world of the Dian spirits." Naruto's violet eyes widened with fear. "Am I D?" he whispered softly, fear lacing his tone. "Am I D, without Gigi telling me who my parents were? We are between worlds, Naruto. You are not," Ashura repeated in an equally soft manner, yet still sternly. He placed a hand on the blonde's head. The child, shocked at the touch, and at the fact that this complete stranger knew his name, looked up at the older man with blinking eyes. However, even before he could speak, there was a flash of light and warmness flooded his body. He fell to the floor, or at least, fell down onto the surface, which would have been the floor in the real world, and passed out again. Colors, sounds and flashes went through his mind. The memories and knowledge of a completely different time and life integrated themselves into his very being, in a way that had never happened before to any other transmigrant. From that day forwards, Otsutsuki Ashura and Namikaze, Senju, Uzumaki Naruto were one and the same. Naruto slowly fluttered his eyes open, to stare at white ceiling again. However, he noted idly that it was a different white than what he had seen before. His eyes were attacked by bright light, so he quickly shut them again, while his nose was filled with a sharp and clean smell. It made him uncomfortable. He braced himself and opened his eyes once more, shifting a bit on the bed. "I see you're awake, Naruto-kun," an elderly voice called. The blonde froze, needing a second to process it. Two names sprang forth in his mind at once and settled next to one another, in complete balance. The child took a deep breath to settle the fact within his own mind. He was Ashura and he was Naruto. Both at once. He shifted his gaze to find the Hokage sitting next to his bed, the lines of worry prominent on his face. "How are you feeling?" "Awful," he wanted to say. Having your mind ripped in two then put back together, accommodating two different lives' memories was not fun. It was like Shukaku had jumped on him. The tanuki had always been unmindful of the difference in size, when he wanted to express his affections. Instead, he spoke different words. "Fine, I guess. My head hurts and I'm sleepy," he answered. And it was partly true. He was sleepy and his head hurt. It was just a little bit worse than he let on. He was also confused. Where was Indra? If he remembered, then Indra, or at least, his current incarnation, should as well. His eyes darted around the room searching and he gently stretched his sensory too. It was strange. It hurt in a way and it was slower than it had been in his previous life. But then again, sensory was like another limb and it could get cramped, if not used for a long time. If his brother remembered, then how was he still laying calmly in his bed? Knowing Indra and his temper as well as his annoying ability to hold grudges, he should be already here, preparing his favorite short-range attack, Rabery, lightning needles. The doctor said you should heal in a few days. There are just small bruises and a bit of chakra exhaustion. Which reminds me, how have you unlocked your chakra, Naruto-kun? Naruto blinked at the old man, confused for a moment. And then, oh, no. When I gained my memories, I also unlocked my chakra. By the Shinju. I hope I had not used any attack subconsciously. He shook his head, feigning confusion. When your pastime was pranking and one of your siblings was a kitsune, you learned a trick or two. I don't know. The old man studied him for a moment and then hummed. Well, I hope you get better soon. You can leave in a few days and the Anbu will escort you home, then. Naruto smiled, relieved. Thank you. When a few days later, the Anbu dropped him off at home, he smiled at them gratefully. It grated at him, that people thought of his non-human siblings, as monsters, and it also hurt, that because having Kurama sealed inside of him, people feared and hated him. He had tried talking to Kurama about the situation, but the fox had been strangely blunt angriven. He had said, that it was the fault of two of his descendants, ancestors. One Uzumaki and one Senju, but it was also due to an Uchiha. Namely, he ended up sealed in an Uzumaki woman because the aforementioned Senju and Uchiha fought, continuing the cycle of hatred the clans lived in, since his and Indra's D for the first time. He also absently noted that Kurama pointedly refused to say names. Naruto shook his head and waved at the masked shinobi. Arigato, Inu-san, Tora-san. It was nice of you to show me a way here, which others use less. You're welcome, Naruto. Inu spoke quietly, ruffling his hair. He leaned into it a bit, not even realizing how touch-starved he was, until the man touched him. For now, an entire squad will stay, and then, for the next week or so, there will always be one of us near you, so you will just have to call for us. All right. He beamed at the man and studied him curiously. The man's chakra was nothing like Indra's and he had silver hair. From what Naruto could tell, he wasn't an Uchiha, yet he had a fully mature Sharingan. In only one eye, but it was a Sharingan nonetheless. It made him curious. Who was this Anbu? He nodded. Hi. Arigato, Inu-san. Anytime, Naruto, the man said with a chuckle, before disappearing. Naruto stood in his spot for a second, stretching his senses to follow the kind stranger. He was in the shadows, perfectly part of them, like a true shinobi. He also sensed three others, and strangely enough, one of them had a touch of his own chakra to the signature. Naruto blinked in that agent's direction, thoughtful for a while. Was that stranger one of his own kin, as perhaps Inu was Indra's? On a side note, he didn't feel anyone in the village who came even remotely close to his chakra. No Senju or Uzumaki anywhere, save for the one in the shadows. Where were his kin? Why was he alone? Surely, he taught his children well enough to instill loyalty and care for family. Meanwhile, Tenzo had a hard time remaining still, pressed against the apartment wall, as the blonde turned to him. The child could not see him, but Tenzo could see Naruto, and the sharp, narrowed violet eyes made him uncomfortable for some reason. And the fact that the kid was subconsciously releasing a mix of ki and chakra didn't help either. It wasn't a big amount, compared to what he felt from A-rank shinobi, but for a 6-year-old, it was an impressive feat, for sure. Not to mention, that he had unlocked it without any previous training. It was most likely jump-started by the emotional and physical trauma, but it was a very rare thing to happen. So far, Tenzo only knew of one similar situation where a child faced with great trauma unlocked his chakra without any prior training. Holy crap. The kid surely has dense chakra. And it doesn't feel malicious at all, so it's surely his and not the fox's. If so, he's going to be one hell of a shinobi. Tenzo thought. He feared for the nations, if this kid was ever properly trained. That amount and density was devastating in itself, and it would only grow with time. The kid could be a powerhouse. Add the fact that he was a Jinchuriki, and the kid would be a walking juggernaut by 20. Note to self, Tenzo muttered under his breath, stay on the kid's good side. Uchiha Sasuke's life was content, perfect, in a way only an innocent child's could be. A child, who had a loving family and always had kin nearby to greet him, or offer him advice. However, he also noticed that the oddest of things would give him a feeling of familiarity, a sense of something missing. It started randomly one day, when he was 6. The feeling would come without warning and would leave him disoriented for several minutes. Like the time when he saw his aunt practice fire jutsu. It was as if something within him whispered that he knew, or should know how it worked. Like when he saw his father's Sharingan. Or when he first saw Shisui's eyes. It had a different pattern than what he knew the Sharingan to be. When he asked his cousin, Shisui said it was the Mangekyo Sharingan. Stronger than the standard 3-tomo version, but getting these eyes, as well as using them, was hard and not worth it, as his cousin said. Sasuke didn't really understand what he meant by that. And then, when he was 7, someone mentioned something about D&K with jutsu, and the odd feeling was back, in a bad way. As if what he had overheard should not have happened. When he entered the academy, Sasuke didn't have many friends. In fact, he didn't have any. It was just not his sort of thing. He felt more at ease on his own, in a way. He missed the company of others, but he was fine on his own too. It was like he missed certain people, not people in general. At first, he thought he missed his mother and Itachi, no, not his father. His father was so busy that his absence was normal, and even when he was around, he paid little attention to Sasuke. It grated at Sasuke in an odd sort of way, but at the same time, he realized that he didn't mind being left out. His father was a demanding man, that much Sasuke understood, and for now, he was left to his own devices, to enjoy his childhood. And then, when he met that boy, the feeling of missing something disappeared, replaced by something else. Familiarity. It was something Sasuke didn't understand. He had never met the violet-eyed blonde before. After that first time, when he noticed the blonde on his own by the swings, he always felt it. The searing violet eyes following his every move. Then, during the spars, he was sorted to fight the blonde, and that was the first time he heard his name. Uzumaki Naruto. He fought well and unlike any other. The style Naruto used was strange, yet he felt he should know it. As time passed, he took notice of the small things. No one ever played with Naruto. He was always alone. The parents glared at him and would whisper to their children, when they thought no one would hear, see that blonde. Don't play with him. He's trouble. He noticed how the teachers ignored Naruto. There were times when Naruto would raise his hand, give a correct answer, just once in a while, but it would be ignored, and the next minute, when another kid would give the same answer, the teacher would praise them. When the teachers instructed him to unlock their chakra, Naruto told Iruka-sensei his chakra was already unlocked. Sasuke watched with confused curiosity, as fear flashed through the man's face. His voice even wavered a bit, when he told Naruto to demonstrate. Sasuke had an odd feeling, that the man wanted to ridicule Naruto. But then, Naruto's chakra flared in a tiny flame and Sasuke found himself relaxing. There was something familiar about the energy. It was warm, dense and calming, reaching out to cover him, like a blanket. Once his moment of bliss passed, Sasuke saw Iruka-sensei glare, but there was fear in his eyes, too, and he waved Naruto out of class, saying he had no place there that day, if his chakra was already in use. Naruto frowned at Iruka-sensei, sad and angry at once, but politely bid farewell and left. When they went back into the classroom, Sasuke noted that Naruto's small, ragged backpack was gone. As he sat down, the sensei announced the material for the rest of the class and Sasuke realized Naruto would not know what it was. He took notes extra carefully, for the rest of the day. The next morning, he found Naruto by the swing alone and pressed the previous day's notes into the Uzumaki's hands. Copy them, or else you'll fail the next exam, he muttered, unsure what had prompted him to give the notes to the other. Naruto looked at him with surprise and then his eyes glinted. Naruto thanked him and his grin was as blinding as the sun. That grin was familiar to Sasuke. It was as if he'd already seen it 1,000 times, but he could not pinpoint when or where. He noticed that the academy sabotaged Naruto. They couldn't mess up his practical scores in the field, but whenever it was something written, Naruto always scored last, which Sasuke found odd. You couldn't have good scores on the practicals, if you didn't know the theory. It was something both his mother and Itachi warned him about several times. Then, he noticed that Naruto often sat through the long break without eating. He never had a bento. So, one night, he asked his parents about Naruto and why people seemed to treat him badly. His parents shared a look and Sasuke swore that for the first time, he saw that his father was sad. People are prejudiced, his father explained. They don't like things that are different from normal. Different? He asked. Naruto-kun is an orphan, Ototo. Itachi said softly. He does not have a clan or parents. His parents died when he was young. That was bad. So that was why Naruto never had a bento. Because he didn't have a mother to prepare one for him. A different part of his mind would question why others would dislike Naruto for being an orphan. It wasn't his fault, after all. Sasuke was sure, Naruto would have liked to have a family, too. So after dinner, when he climbed into bed and his mother tucked him in, Sasuke asked her if she could prepare a bento for Naruto, which he could give the blonde. His mother had been surprised and for a moment, Sasuke saw the same fear in her eyes he had seen in his sensei's, before she smiled and agreed. The next day, when he gave the second bento to Naruto, the Uzumaki lit up like the sun and hugged him. That was strange and Sasuke needed all his self-control not to shove the whisked face into the fresh food. It was an odd thing between the two of them. They didn't speak or spend time with each other, outside of class. But Naruto's eyes would follow him, as if he was expecting something he had no idea what, from him. Sasuke would give Naruto the material they needed for the tests, if the teachers sent him out of class in suspicious circumstances. Bringing an extra bento and dropping it at the blonde's usual eating spot had also become a habit. They never ate together, but Naruto's grateful grins and nods would be constant. And whenever they sparred, well, it was strange. Naruto's written scores were so bad, that they were nearly non-existent, but he was the only one in class, who could challenge Sasuke in a spar. By Kami. The blonde had even corrected him a few times, subtly, which he had only realized after Shisui or Itachi had pointed it out, during their rare times together. Other parents and children kept away from Naruto. His parents never told him to stay away from the blonde. In fact, they encouraged him to befriend him, well, his mother did. So, his days in the academy had become a content routine, good enough for him to ignore the constant nagging in the back of his mind, that he should know something, should do something, should be with someone else. Then, out of the blue, his perfect life was shattered to a million pieces. Sasuke's legs shook, as he saw the bee littering the dark streets of the Uchiha district. The air was heavy with the smell of bee and the red liquid was everywhere, tainting the walls, the stalls, the ground. Sasuke shivered. What had happened here? Where were his parents? He broke into a run and sped past the motionless bee. There was Uncle Kaito, that was Rei-san. He turned his gaze away, afraid of how many other familiar faces he would see. When he finally reached their house, Sasuke almost tore up the tatami door, in desperation. Oto-san. Oka-san. Tadaima, he called, as he walked into the house, without taking off his shoes. He froze in shock, when he found the bee of his parents on the floor of the sitting room, bee pooling beneath both. His parents were D. The shadows shifted and Sasuke looked up, as his older brother melted out of the darkness. Ototo. Itachi greeted. His tone was cold. As cold and as the bee of their parents. Sasuke's eyes flickered over his brother. He was dressed in his Anbu armor, his tanto was dripping bee in his eyes were like a three-bladed shuriken. Sasuke knew those eyes. Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi, what happened? He whispered, shock and fear taking hold of his whole body. IK them. Itachi said in a low tone, IK every single one of them. No. That couldn't be. Why would? B rushed in his ears and he fell onto his knees, as he looked up at his bro at the man, who had once been his brother. Why? He choked out. Itachi's eyes glowed sinisterly and Sasuke could barely keep his gaze away. In the back of his mind, the lesson of never looking a dojutsu user in the eyes, echoed hollowly. Then, Itachi was gone in a burst of speed. Sasuke scrambled to his feet, although he didn't know where he found the strength to stand. He ran out of the house, out onto the streets, following his brother's trail. Tears streamed down his face and anger stirred in his heart. Itachi! He shouted angrily. Itachi stopped and looked at him again. Sasuke stopped too and studied him for a moment. Why? Why would I? He choked, the question hanging in the air, unformed. Me. Itachi's face was blank, but as his eyes were filled with loathing. You're weak. A waste of my time. Sasuke staggered back, the words were like a physical blow. Hate me. Remember this night and despise me. Then, when you have these eyes, come and fight me. Come and fight and if you fail, I will finish what I've started tonight. Itachi turned then, suddenly and for a second, Sasuke caught a glimpse of the shuriken-like pattern once more. Tsukuyomi. Moon Reader. And then, everything went dark. When Sasuke gained awareness again, he saw the red moon hang over the Uchiha compound and then, he saw his brother appear behind someone like a shadow. And then suddenly, the picture shattered, like glass and he was surrounded by a much calmer environment, although he could not identify what it was. It was as if it changed constantly, even before his mind could make sense of the picture. You need not see that. But, at the very least, that man made it easier for me to reach you, Sasuke. Although, modifying Tsukuyomi like this was actually strange, as it plays with the victim's mind, a male voice said. Sasuke's breath hitched and he whirled around. Just out of his reach stood a stranger he had never seen before, yet there was this feeling, as if he was looking at a distorted reflection of a mirror. The man had long brown hair cut short on top. 2 locks wrapped in bandages framed either side of his face. His eyebrows were cut short. His hair was in a long cylinder and he had blue markings around his eyes, which were turned up at the corners. He wore a high-collared, light-colored kimono held closed by a dark sash. The collar of the kimono was adorned with magatama. He wore a black full-bodied suit underneath. But his most prominent features were his eyes. One moment, they were a warm shade of deep brown and the next, they were crimson with 3 tomos circling the pupil. Sharingan, he choked out. Who are you? My name is Otsutsuki Indra. I'm the first user of the Sharingan and the progenitor of the Uchiha clan, as well as the elder son of the Rikudo Sennin. Sasuke's eyes almost popped out of their sockets at that. The son of the Sennin, a man of fables. And you, Uchiha Sasuke, are my next incarnation. Indra stated, as if he were commenting on the weather. Sasuke woke to the smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. He blinked to clear his vision and looked around briefly. He was in a hospital room. Why would I be in? He cut that thought off, when it came back to him, as clearly as day. Making his way home from the academy, finding the DB, Itachi the clan, and Indra. Sasuke jolted up in bed. Remembering a different life wasn't fun, it caused a hell of a headache. He groaned softly, rubbing his temple. Ashura. The name of his brother floated into his mind without his consent, and there was a sudden desire in his heart to seek out the younger and apologize. Sasuke swallowed hard, his eyes flickering to the window. The Uchiha would be. His only family left was Ashura. After what happened, that man would never be his brother again. He clumsily stretched out his senses, searching for the powerful, calming presence of his brother. Yes, powerful in a way only an Otsutsuki could be. After a minute, he found it. His lips turned upward into a tiny, pleased smile, and he looked down at the wires connecting him to the device. His eyes narrowed at it and he sent a small pulse of Raiten chakra through it. The monitor immediately turned black. Satisfied with his work, he tore off the wires and hurriedly grabbed the long robe, throwing it over the flimsy pajamas he'd been dressed in. Without a backwards glance, he leapt out the open window. He sped through the roofs of the village with chakra-enhanced leaps, clinging to Ashura's powerful presence, like a lifeline. He was the only one left. He hoped, prayed to any kami that would listen, that Ashura would not turn him away. Of course, he would understand. If he did, he had tried to kill his little brother about 30 times, after all, and the times of the many reincarnations, which he didn't want to remember, weren't even counted. So he would understand, if Ashura didn't even want him within his sensory range. Still, a desperate part of him hoped that Ashura's caring heart would be open to him, as it was for others, even after all the fighting. When he arrived, he jumped down to a back alley and darted closer. He noted with great displeasure that his brother's small apartment, which was obviously in a deplorable state, was at the border of the Akasan. The nerve of the lot. But, right now, he was too tired even to be angry, and he just wanted to make sure his brother was fine. Knowing that Ashura was fine would be enough, if his brother wanted nothing to do with him. He staggered over to the door and knocked erratically. After a minute or two, which was like an entire lifetime of waiting for him, the door opened and Sasuke found himself facing a very familiar classmate. Sun-kissed, spiky hair, mystical violet eyes, and 3 fox-like whiskers on each cheek. If he weren't so tired, he would have laughed at the irony of it all. He had formed a bond with the blonde, even before he knew, or perhaps Naruto had known from the start. Naruto, he wanted to say. To ask the Uzumaki to let him stay for the night and then he would be gone. But as exhaustion took hold of him, darkening the edges of his vision, an entirely different name slipped from his lips. Ashura. Naruto had been worried when he heard what had happened to the Uchihas. To think one of their own would turn against them. Yes, he had never agreed with Indra's forceful methods of peace, and in fact by the end his brother had seen Edmund, but he knew one thing for sure. Once, his brother had cared for him, and if anyone would have dared harming him, then Indra would have burned the world for him. Just as he knew Indra would have burned the world for his children if it meant their safety or happiness. In short, there was no one who cared more than an Uchiha. But that care and love was also their downfall. If the one they cared for so deeply was lost to them, taken by or betrayal, well, that was the reason for Thanakushimi no Noroi. The point was that he had been worried for Indra. Yet he hadn't been close to the Uchiha in the academy, despite the short bonding periods. So suddenly heading towards the hospital in a mad dash, ditching even the menin and instead hopping into the room through the window, was not an opinion. It would have been overly suspicious, and suspicion was something he wanted to avoid. The Hokage already had extra eyes on him, due to being Kurama's host. Or, more likely because the civilians were violent towards him because of Kurama. So he had been quite surprised when his morning routine was disturbed by his sensory tingling. Indra, Sasuke, he would have to call the Uchiha by the name he carried in this life, or else he might freak his friend, brother, out, was nearby. In fact, he was right. His thoughts were interrupted by a frantic knock. He froze for a second, processing it. Sasuke was on the other side of the door. The Uchiha had sought him out on his own. Shaking his head to focus, Naruto scrambled to his feet to open the door. Sasuke looked worn and paler than usual, his bottomless black eyes fretful and pleading at the same time. Ashura, the Uchiha choked out, before falling. Naruto reacted on instinct and caught his falling friend. No, brother, he remembered. And he was here. He was glad that Sasuke's voice had been so quiet. He didn't have entire Anbu squads following him now, like he did around the time of his birthday. However, an Anbu would pop up randomly, to make sure he was fine. He wouldn't have wanted anyone to hear that. It would be a pain to explain why Sasuke called him by a different name. Or why he was in his home in the first place. By the looks of it, Sasuke had fled the hospital, as soon as he woke up. But, that wasn't much of a surprise. Indra had hated letting others see him weak and hated being around people who could heal. There was one time he could recall, when Indra had been seriously injured, months before the task their father had sent him on to determine the heir. It was that one time when Indra had been bedridden, and even then, his brother had only allowed him to do the healing. He denied help from even their father, and that was something. Naruto carefully shifted his Uchiha friend and dragged him over to the crappy bed. Everything was old and used in his home, but the bed was perhaps more comfortable than the couch. Once he was sure Sasuke was relatively comfortable, he gathered some medical chakra into his hand to check him. Sadly, his chakra control was near non-existent, compared to the amount of control he had before, so the green chakra flickered out fast. Yet, it was enough for him to know that Sasuke was fine. He was just tired. Satisfied with his findings, he pulled a blanket over his brother and decided to head out. The forest wasn't far from here, and he was sure he would find a few herbs, which would have a calming effect. He had a feeling his brother would need them. And perhaps, he would need them too. When Sasuke woke up, he saw a gray ceiling with peeling paint. It wasn't in the hospital, and then he remembered. He remembered remembering his life and then fleeing to follow Ashura's traces. He sat up and looked around. The apartment was small and old, the paint peeling from the walls, and the door was just barely in place. The couch was faded and torn, and even this, he looked down. He lay on Naruto's, Ashura's, bed. Honestly, even sleeping on the ground would have been more comfortable. He felt anger stir in him again. Why was Naruto living alone? Shouldn't he have a guardian? Besides, he was a royal Uzumaki. A clan heir. He should not be here, living next to whores. He should have been on the other side of the village in a comfortable apartment if he found his family compound too big. Wait, did the Uzumaki even have a compound here? Where was the blonde anyway? The place was filled with his potent chakra, so Sasuke knew he had been here. He might have even disturbed the blonde in some chakra practice. Yet, he wasn't here now. Sasuke. He had not jumped even a bit, when he heard his name being called. He shifted his gaze, to see the blonde perched on the narrow windowsill. Naruto had a small bouquet of greens in his hand, which, knowing him, were herbs. And Naruto, he greeted with a nod, cursing himself inwardly for the moment of hesitation. The Uzumaki landed in the house soundlessly, moving over to his kitchen with the soundless grace he'd always possessed. For a second, Sasuke forgot how clumsy he could be sometimes. Now and back then, too. He silently watched, as Naruto chopped up the herbs and put some into a cup. He grabbed another cup, filled it with water and heated the liquid with a small burst of Kaiten chakra. Sasuke's lips twitched upwards at the casual use of their art. Today shinobi, or at least some of the shinobi with B histories, would have looked at the blonde strangely for using chakra for trivial matters, like boiling water for tea. He poured the heated water on the herbs and covered the cup with a plate, before walking over and placing the cup a foot away, so neither of them would kick it up and spill the liquid. I'm sorry, Sasuke blurted out. He couldn't hold it anymore. He had come to apologize, after all. I'm sorry for saying those things. I'm sorry for not listening to you. He looked down. For being jealous, when we could have shared things, as you suggested we do, after Oto-sama's D. I would say I'm sorry for trying to K you at least 30 times, but I don't have an excuse for that, and people don't brush off an attempt on their life by their own B. Much less 30. He looked up. For once in forever, he couldn't read his brother's expression. I know I made mistakes. Big ones, that can't be ignored or brushed. My actions sparked a war, which lasted for ages. He gulped, but, this mess, this misery. Maybe I deserved it. Traitors don't deserve more than misery, after all. But you and yours never deserved it. You were too good and caring for all that. You should have had happiness and everything good in the world, because you deserved it, you still deserve it, and I don't. Sasuke looked away again, unable to stand the sharp violet gaze. Gods, it was even harder to withstand these cutting eyes, than the brown gaze before. I forgive you. Naruto muttered, and suddenly, Sasuke had two arms wrapped around his neck in a tight hug. You were my first friend in the academy. The first person to notice me. And you were my brother before. You still best friend and brother, no matter what time we live in. The grip tightened even more. And this time around, I will keep an even closer eye on you. Zetsu won't ever touch you again. Sasuke's breath hitched and tears slipped from his eyes. It's my fault your parents in this life are No. Naruto said. That's Madara alone. And Zetsu. Not you. That cycle ended at the Shumatsu no Tani. It's Zetsu, who's to blame. And you, Indra. Sasuke slowly relaxed into the hug, and for a moment, he just enjoyed his brother's closeness. Because no matter the names, no matter what time they lived in, they would always be brothers. Best friends and brothers. Then, Naruto let go of him and gathered the tea from the floor, offering it to him with a smile. Drink. It will help you calm down and keep a clear head. The Uchiha smiled. His brother was his anchor. His light. He took the cup and sipped at the hot contents. As the heat spread through his body, he could already feel himself relaxing. Thank you. I know you always liked tea. Sasuke chuckled. Not just for the tea. For saving me from Zetsu. For saving me from myself. You're welcome, Ni-sama. But that's what little brothers are for. To knock some sense into the big brothers, when they start acting like the biggest idiotic jerks of the millennia. Naruto grinned foxily. Sasuke couldn't help the amused snort that escaped him. Trust Ashura to make fun of even the most serious situations. Oh, by the Shinju, how much he'd missed this. Just being around his brother, calmly, enjoying each other's company, while sipping tea. Seriously, that tea was so good, that Sasuke was sure it should bagel. Kakashi was sure that if his hair wasn't naturally silver, then the white, which sneaked its way into it within a week, would have been much more visible. First, his favorite, most promising subordinate goes rogue after Ki's entire clan in a single only survivor who remained, was said K's younger brother, who was currently missing from the hospital. With the Uchiha's D and the last survivor missing, the entire Anbu was a frantic mess. Kakashi was surprised, when he had been given his mission details for the day. No Uchiha search. No crime scene investigation. Instead, the Hokage had personally asked him to keep an eye on his sensei's son. Kakashi had no idea why. The villagers were too shocked by the news of the Uchihas to care about Naruto's presence, but he didn't complain. He could not muster up the courage to approach the child and introduce himself. But at least, he could keep an eye on him. It was the least thing he owed to his sensei and Kushina-san. And now arriving in his lovely charge's apartment, he found them both here. Naruto and Sasuke, sitting on Naruto's old bed. Sasuke was sipping tea and they were sitting next to each other. Naruto's head on Sasuke's shoulder. The oddest, most unexpected scene ever. He would have thought the two would hate each other. Their personalities and backgrounds were just too different for them to understand the other. Another blow was when, just after settling on his usual spot, the Uchiha's eyes found him. Is he a sensor too, like Naruto? He thought. It was possible, but unlikely. The Uchiha had few senses in their ranks. Sensory ability was something for which the Senju and Uzumaki had been known for. Although a sensor or two tended to pop up among the Uchiha too in a few generations. If Sasuke was one too, then they would be a hell of a pair. Two senses on the same team, a tracker specialist would pay for the opportunity to work with two powerful senses, like the boys seemed to be. Because Sasuke had to be gifted with it too, to spot a fully trained Anbu. Ototo. Sasuke hissed. We have an intruder. Kakashi blinked in disbelief. Had Uchiha Sasuke just called Naruto, the orphan, village pariah, Ototo? Naruto perked up and after a second, his eyes settled on Kakashi's spot too. Why the hell was he still in the shadows when both kids were aware of his presence? Kids these days, he grunted mentally, no respect for their Anbu betters, just doing their assigned duty. Naruto smiled and patted the Uchiha softly. Relax. That's Inu-san. He's nice. One of the few people who are actually nice to me. Him and his squad often stop by to check on me, cause the villagers. He shrugged, his face sheepish and sad at the same time. You know. Sasuke grunted something under his breath. As he saw the Uchiha wince, Kakashi decided it was time to reveal himself. The kids knew he was here, anyway. Uchiha-kun, Naruto-kun, he greeted before looking at Sasuke again. You should still be in the hospital, Uchiha-kun. The Mednin weren't done with their work, from what I've heard. Sasuke scowled at him, his eyes narrowing, and if looks could Kakashi was sure, he would be 6 feet under. But then again, he was an Uchiha. Some of the Uchiha looks could He just hoped Sasuke would never gain so much power, to take down S-ranked shinobi with a mere glance. Oh, if only he knew. I'm not going back, Sasuke said, his tone sharp and final. I'm sorry, but all the Anbu have orders to take you back, if they see you. So, that is what I will do, he said, walking closer. Sasuke glared and suddenly a blast of intent was directed at him from the Uchiha, his charcoal eyes burning red with 3 tomo. What the hell had Itachi done to the kid, which gave Sasuke fully developed eyes in a single night? I will not go, he growled, only to be cut off, as Naruto put a hand on his shoulder. Ni-sama, Naruto hissed. Relax. And it's not nice to act to him like that, you know. He's one of my few favorite people. Kakashi smiled under his mask at those words. It was nice to hear that Naruto liked them, because he assumed by few favorite people, the blonde had meant the Hokage and the ANBU, who guarded him in shift since that near-D beating when he was 6. Sasuke growled, more chakra and intent radiating from him, and Kakashi was actually starting to feel uncomfortable. Hisei. Ah, so that's it. Kakashi thought with a sigh. He should have expected something like that, after what had happened to the Uchihas. Naruto hummed. I know, but he's had it even before it. For years at that. Sasuke drew up short and looked at Naruto. Really? Yes. The blonde nodded seriously, and in that moment, Kakashi saw his sensei, instead of the little blonde. Gods, how much he looked like both of his parents. Kakashi knew he shouldn't, but he still spoke. Best get the Uchiha to trust him, at least enough to come back to the hospital willingly. If he knocked Sasuke out, the Mednin would castrate him. I had a very good Uchiha friend years ago. He died in the war. I lost that eye in a previous mission. He saved my team's life, but he was D. He unlocked his Sharingan then. He asked me to take the eye and use it to protect the people I cared about, like he had. The two blinked at him, both of their faces shocked. That, Sasuke muttered, that was nice of him. You must have been close, then. He was my best friend. Kakashi answered simply. The silence stretched on for longer than Kakashi would have liked. Just to get away from the awkwardness of it, and the kid's sharp, searching gaze, Kakashi gestured at the door. We should leave, Uchiha-san. If I don't get you back, both the Hokage and the Medic Nin will be unhappy. You don't piss off Med Nin, he shivered at the very idea. The Uchiha frowned. I hate hospitals. I hate healers, he muttered, his Sharingan taking a complete 180, in agitation. Healers. Who uses such an old-fashioned word these days? The Hatake sighed. He was a tough nut to crack, for sure. If I go with you, Naruto offered. Surely, it's just for today, so they can make sure you're fine. The frown didn't disappear, but Sasuke seemed to consider it, which Kakashi counted as a win. Then, the pair of Sharingan found his gaze again. Can he come too? He nodded slowly. I'm sure he can stay, as long as he doesn't hinder the medics in their work. Slowly, both boys stood up and walked over to him, Sasuke a bit more cautiously than Naruto. Kakashi was sure he would get an earful from both the Hokage and the head medic for bringing Naruto along, but, who cared? At least the boys were willing to cooperate, and Naruto's presence seemed to put Sasuke at ease. It seemed the Uchiha had a friend, a brother. In Minato Sensei's son. That meant more than any medicine a medic could give, right now. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.